right, so we'll start from the very beginning. So I have with me Commissioner Ted Terry, Super District 6. We are going to be discussing today grass epiphanies and Green New Deals.
All right, so thank you so much, AGZA, American Green Zone Alliance, for being an awesome partner and sponsor to this podcast, Roots Down, a Regenerative AF podcast. Really respect the work that you guys do in creating a just transition from gasoline to electric in the landscaping industry. We not only appreciate you being a good partner of Roots Down, but we really appreciate you being a great partner to the earth and helping steward new behaviors that can lead us towards a good, clean energy transition, especially in the landscaping industry where we need it most. Thank you guys so much. We appreciate all the awesome partnership.
We work together now. I work for your office, doing some amazing work, and I've been working with you for a long time. I think this is like my 6th year working with you.
Yep, going back to Clarkston.
Way back to Clarkston.
Yeah, small town days.
Do you remember some of the conversations? Well, so first of all, I had a person renting my house in Clarkston. We moved. Yep. We were actually, I was Farmer Jamie.
Yep.
And I
down on Norman Road.
Yeah, Norman Road, and so I used to come back in and check on my rental property, and somebody there was like, "You've got to meet this guy. He's the mayor of our town. He's amazing. You and him will get along." And I was like, "All right, we'll check it out." So I remember sitting down for our first coffee together at Refuge.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
And I remember us talking about the city spending so much damn money on mowing grass, and we were like, what the hell can we do? Well, let's just start. I was like, we could just start there, it was alarming to me. I was like, oh my God, we surely could do
Trust
that.
me, because like the city of Clarkston, a budget when I first started was about $3 million like annual, right?
Full on the whole budget, like the whole city.
I think it was like 3.3 million, and the city was 1.1 square miles, and like half of that budget was the police department. And so when the city manager was like, we need to start maintaining the right of ways and do some landscaping, I was like, okay, let's beautify the city. How much is that going to cost? And it was like hundreds of thousands of dollars. I was like, oh my God, like this, why does this cost so much money? And then we're just like mowing the grass and like, spraying roses, right? And like extra fertilizer and chemicals. And I'm a big hippie, which is probably why your person on Norman was like, oh yeah, You're kind of a hippie, Farmer Jamie. You should talk to the hippie mayor.
You had the rebellion beard growing. I remember
yes, the resistance beard.
The resistance beard.
Yes, that's right. That was 2016, 2017. So I mean, it's I think where we started out was, we were talking with one of the nonprofits that does farming in Clarkston, and they were like, we need to have more farming spaces in Clarkston. But of course, Clarkston didn't have land because it mostly got developed in the 80s, 70s and 80s, mostly sort of gentrified with new apartments back then, with the interstate being expanded, and there really just wasn't enough room. So I remember us saying, okay, well, where do we actually have land? Well, it's in all these little public right-of-ways, railroad tracks, side parts of the sidewalk or a park or something. And it's like, okay, well, what are we doing here?
Right.
And we literally, if you remember, we're just doing the bare bones.
Status
crew
quo.
Comes out, weed eater, blower, mower, sprayer,
whack them and stack them,
and then that was it.
Yep,
it was done.
I remember that.
And I was like, gotta be a better way.
I remember we were developing Friendship Forest at the time, so there was a lot of conversation about doing more ecologically friendly selection of plants. In fact, I got to work with Larry out there on actually reselecting some of the plants that were...
Yep, we restored the wetlands in that project. That was like a $1.5 million project, and it turned out really great.
It is beautiful now. I went back just a month ago, and I was like, this park is absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, and the crazy thing about Friendship Forest, it used to be called Friendship Park, and we actually connected with the guy who was a kid who won the DeKalb County Parks contest for naming the park. And it was like a little, 4th grader at Indian Creek Elementary, and he was like, we're going to call it Friendship Park. Well, it was a DeKalb County park for 80s through the 90s, and then they gave it to the city, basically. But it was in disrepair. There was a tennis court, basketball court, all falling apart. There used to be a wetlands flood zone. The city, county, like piped it up and just, put a culvert there.
I remember.
And it was just a dead space. And basically it was where people were like doing drugs, prostitution, dumping ground. It really was a real eyesore. And then, because of you and all of the work that we invested in that, it is now a nature sanctuary, Audubon sanctuary. I think it actually is one of the few old growth forest, sort of nodes in DeKalb County, because it just never got developed because it was in the floodplain. So that was some good early work we did in Clarkston.
That was great
to kind of just sort of get us more into that ecologically sound, landscaping and park development.
We tried doing a couple meadows. We had some success, some failures, which taught us a lot. It's like fast forward to now, we're having some of the most successful meadows in DeKalb County. They're absolutely beautiful. Well, let's do that. Let's take our journey from Clarkston to DeKalb. So tell me what happened. Let's talk a little bit about what happened. You decided to run for District 6 from being small town mayor. Mm-hmm. So,
I mean, look, I was in my second term as mayor of Clarkston, really from 2013 to 2020, just focused on that job, even though it was part-time job, got paid $6,000 a year, it was, small as public service, right? And we always had a couple issues with the county, to be quite frank. Our two commissioners, Commissioner Bradshaw and Commissioner Gannon, were always, available, but like when you're at the city, it's kind of like, it's a little bit of an antagonistic relationship with the county, because the county does some services, the city does other things, but we overlap. And of course, we're not little islands. So the big thing we worked on with the county back then was to get the bike path bridge across 285. And that was a big project. But a lot of things kept coming back to the surface. And so when Commissioner Gannon said that she was retiring after 16 years in January 2020, I was like, you know what? I think I've done all I could for Clarkston. The next challenges for Clarkston in the immediate area really are county and regional issues.
Right.
So that's why I threw my hat in the ring for that race.
I remember
during the
like
pandemic.
Yes, I remember.
I campaigned during the pandemic.
Yeah.
Which is the worst way to campaign. Barely could knock on doors. People wouldn't even answer the door. They were like, "Oh no, COVID! I can't." Mask on. I had like the whole I was like a hospital, nurse, right, at the door, and they were like, "Not opening the door." So we did all these virtual town halls and blah, 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 and they delayed the election. Finally got elected in August in the runoff. So a good 8 months of campaigning during a pandemic.
So bigger platform, right, for you, much bigger platform.
County's bigger. More going on.
I think you've done a fucking awesome job, like an awesome job. I actually really enjoy working with you and have the last 6 years. It's been really one of the highlights of my career. So that was quite a journey. And I want to talk about how we carried our work from Clarkston to DeKalb County. Mm-hmm. So, we had all these grass epiphanies in DeKalb County, and I remember us having the conversation like, what can we do, or in Clarkston, what can we do in DeKalb County to improve the life of the residents, constituents? I've been a constituent for 20-something years in DeKalb, and I'm like, what can we do that would really actually hit home for everybody? And we started kind of testing the water on different ideas. Do you remember like our conversations about that? We were like, where would we build a pilot of climate resilience? Where would the best pilot be? I think we talked about like fire stations at first, and so then the conversation of libraries happened. And how much we're maintaining the public libraries, to what end, to look like. Yeah.
Well, I think where we started in Clarkston, back to that original idea of there wasn't enough land to like have a farm. Right. And so we had, so number one, Clarkston having all these refugees, a lot of refugees, and depending on what country they had originally come from or situation, they were farmers or they had farms, not subsistence, but maybe sort of as a side income or additional just food for the family or the village, right? And so, these refugees coming to Clarkston, they're like, well, where can we farm? Well, there really wasn't a place to farm. A little bit at Friendship, or at 40 Oaks. Not at Friendship Forest. So we were looking at the public spaces because we really just didn't have enough land in Clarkston. And I think that's when we looked at the community center, the library, the strips of the railroad tracks. And And I think that's where we kind of got to that productive urban landscape sort of model. It was like, well, how do we actually look at a model where we can have like actual like food being grown, right? And in the context of a landscape, fruit trees, blueberry bushes, the native species, beautyberry. I learned all this from you, Jamie.
Serviceberry.
In fact, I think actually we discovered at the Clarkson Library there was a serviceberry tree.
There is one, yeah.
It wasn't being like trimmed the right way. It was kind of maybe like
it was a little
mossy. But it was a good exercise because it was like, well, a landscape company who's only has a very minimal level of training is taking care of these landscapes, and there's actually could be fruit available for the community, but it wasn't being like harvested or anything, right? And so I think when we got to the county, we were like, okay, how do we continue what we were trying to do in Clarkston, bring it to the county? And yes, we looked at fire stations first, but not enough land. The fire stations, to an extent, not as publicly accessible. Like some of our old fire stations, they're literally just a driveway and a bay for the fire trucks, right? No community rooms. Right. The newer fire stations have like community rooms and actually can you can go shelter during a storm or charge your phone, right, or thing. But the libraries, we got 23 libraries in DeKalb County, a ton in Super District 6. And then, of course, Clarkston's library, being next to the community center, had that big piece of land in between. And we're like, okay, we got to do something. Let's just start somewhere. So we started at the Clarkson Library.
Yeah. I think it was a great pilot. And look at it now. We've got some really beautiful before and after.
You got to show those before and after pictures because, that soil was so compacted. The stormwater runoff was ridiculous. And it's just kind of a dead zone.
So So one of the things that we get into conversations with all the time with people that are involved in climate action is, why is this really important? Why does this matter? And I just want to kind of spit out a fact that net carbon sequestration rates in the urban lawns and landscapes have been estimated at between 200 and 1,800 pounds of carbon per year. So in DeKalb, we have 10,000 acres of managed land. I did the math on that. 10,000 acres of managed land. So we could probably sequester 7 million tons of carbon each year by changing just the way we maintain our public spaces. So that's the epiphany that I've had, because some people are like this when they talk about this, they're like, oh, this is cute. And one of the things that I really want to hit home about is, well, it's not cute, because if we lose our soil, which is the most precious thing we have on this planet, if we lose our soil, then we lose the opportunity to grow anything. We can't even grow our grass at that point. They're just going to pump more chemicals in. It's just going to perpetuate, more evils and more carbon being released into the atmosphere. Yep. So I find it interesting that fact kind of shows us that is what I call an easy carbon for us to tackle.
Yeah.
And this is an easy conversation. This is a good barrier to entry, conversation to have. Let's just change the way we maintain our public spaces. Maybe electrify the industry. Maybe lessen the use of chemicals. We overuse chemicals. At the Clarkson Library, they were spraying indiscriminately.
Yeah.
The vendors were
herbicide, pesticide, all the sides.
Gallons. Well, in a big truck that would pull up at the side of the library. I remember I was like, oh my God, this is going to look really bad.
Yeah.
The big truck pulls up with a 150-gallon sprayer on it, and they just whip out the hose, and they're just like, I'm like, what are you spraying?
Drifting into everything. And
it killed so many of our plants out there. That will set me off. I don't want to talk about that today.
Yeah. Well, that's the systems shift, because it may seem kind of cute and small here and there, but when you add it up, as you pointed out, it's thousands and thousands of acres, and it's not like we're not doing anything, because we are doing something in this managed land.
Right.
It's what we're putting into it.
Right.
And I think what we've talked about and what you've highlighted is it's what we're putting into it. We should be getting as much out of it, and or having some of that carbon sequestration benefit. If we're going to actually have this piece of land, let's maximize the productive use of it. Certainly aesthetically, make it something that's appealing. But if it can be part of our, net carbon goal that we have in DeKalb County, we want to get to net zero carbon by 2050. That's, in alignment
Right.
with the federal government's goals, Biden and Harris. And it's not like you can't just put solar panels on a roof and say, all right, we're at net carbon. It is, and this is, I take inspiration from Project Drawdown, where you just look at every little slice of the systems and landscaping, land management. To my surprise, and you've highlighted this, is a tremendous part of that pie of carbon emissions. And we're already spending all this money to manage it. We just tweak it a little here, a little there, maybe not even put that much more money into it, and all of a sudden we're getting a lot more benefit out of it. And it's not something that we're doing. We're not, it's great. We got to save the rainforests in Brazil, 100%.
Big.
We got.
How are we going to do that?
We got to take care of the reefs, off the coast of Australia. But also, let's take care of our own backyards.
Yeah,
our
that
own
plays a
land
part.
that is by where our schools are, where our children play,
Yeah.
where we ourselves walk in our own neighborhoods, where our families go to community centers and parks and libraries.
Right. I say that all the time. I was like, if we do not have the tools to figure out how to affect climate change at a local level, at a small level, we're never going to be able to figure it out. Like saving the oceans, we have no chance in hell. Like we can't even make our yards ecologically friendly. Like, you know what I'm saying? So those are some of the small things. I don't know. Have we talked about the Kiss the Ground movement? Are you familiar with that movie?
I think I've heard about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's the idea of the movie. The premise of the movie is soil is our best hope to saving our planet.
Yes,
and there's
I agree
actually
with that.
facts out there. I think there's a fact that we'll have to fact check me on this, but if you can layer 1 inch of compost over
the entire
soil,
Earth,
the entire Earth over all the soil, then we would effectively solve climate change.
Yeah.
We would cool the planet down and everything would be fine.
Yeah. Just because of that carbon sequestration factor.
Yeah. So I joke around about the Sherwin-Williams paint the earth.
Yeah.
Like
the
with
worst worst logo.
I think we
ever.
should change that to this.
We're gonna start a campaign right now.
The earth.
They need to just cover the earth with soil.
Yeah.
With good quality compost. After you've taken your food scraps and compost them.
Yeah. So the premise of the Kiss the Ground movement is all about farms, regenerative agriculture.
Yes.
And they don't really in that movie, in both movies, Grounded and Kiss the Ground, they talk about regenerative agriculture in the peri-urban and rural areas. They don't really talk about climate change here in the urban areas. Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. I think there's a lot of room for that conversation. That's really why I've built this regenerative podcast to talk about it. I want to move into I want to talk about your vision for the DeKalb County Green New Deal. Mm-hmm. Because local level, we're both local climate champions. We want it to happen at a local level, and we feel like we can affect change at a local level. So tell me some of your goals. Let's talk about the DeKalb County Green New Deal and that platform and how you see us winning with that.
Yeah, and the DeKalb Green New Deal really the first word in that slogan is DeKalb, right?
Right.
Because if you talk to anyone in America and you say, what's the Green New Deal? They might think it's a big federal government program that's going to do all these things, right? But at the end of the day, this was the inception of the Green New Deal, whether it was through Bernie Sanders or through Ed Markey and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and several of the Democrats in the House and Senate. At the end of the day, it is a local solution. It is, in my mind, it always was about the federal government supporting and enhancing the work that is done at the local level. Because at the end of the day, there's 3,000 counties in America.
Right.
All of them have county commissioners. In those counties, there's city council members, mayors, school board members. There's lower levels of government, all with their own problems. And there ain't enough money to solve those problems. However, we know for a fact, and we just got a report on the cleanup of Hurricane Helene. Just in DeKalb County, probably about $5 million in damage. But long term,
in DeKalb County,
just alone, yeah. So we got lucky, right? Augusta, much more hit. Other 20-something counties in rural, southeast Georgia, still don't have power, devastated, right? So but if it hit us directly, tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in damage, lives could have been lost.
Look what happened. Look what happened in North Carolina.
Look what happened in North Carolina and places that weren't even thinking we're not on the coast.
Yep.
Right. So the bottom line is that we're going to be paying for this no matter what. It makes sense to me that we find localized solutions. So the DeKalb Green New Deal is about, well, what can we do locally? And it's an all of the above approach, but it's what's going to be best for us, right? We're not putting up wind turbines in DeKalb County because guess what? We don't have wind power. There's no wind. There's a ton of wind out in Texas, Illinois, Iowa. They're going gangbusters over there. They're powering whole cities with wind power. And the cows don't mind it, all right? They got little cow pastures with the wind turbines, right? Now, we are in Georgia, third best state in America for solar energy, best climate, best spot on the earth, a lot of land. So we got to maximize solar, maximize energy efficiency. We got to convert to electric vehicle charging. Like those are sort of the obvious things that have a real dollar per dollar value for the county. We literally can save millions of dollars and generate millions of dollars in revenue for the county just by switching to these clean energy, clean transportation solutions. But as our most recent report that we'll be, I think, adopting later this year from Southface, which has done our transition plan, if we do all of that, we're only getting to 23% energy independence, clean energy, and clean transportation. So after that, it becomes the community. It becomes the land that we have. It's all the little gaps in between. And we want to highlight what local neighborhoods want. Environmental justice is a core principle of the DeKalb Green New Deal because we have sewer overflows, we have flooding in predominantly African-American neighborhoods, we have the landfill, one of the largest landfill in Metro Atlanta with one of the highest point source pollution, methane, in the country. We're like number 8 of the top 10 highest polluting landfills, and it's in South DeKalb. Why is the landfill in South DeKalb? Well, it's lower income, a little bit more land down there at the time, but quite frankly, it has been a detriment to underserved and marginalized communities who have been impacted by systemic racism for 100 plus years, at least in DeKalb County, going back even further than that.
And they're the most vulnerable to any climate issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we literally got a slideshow yesterday at Public Works Infrastructure Committee, and it was a neighborhood that was built in the 1960s, and there's only one way in and one way out to that neighborhood, and it goes across a bridge.
Oh my God.
And under that bridge is a creek, and that creek got really high during Helene. And they said, we got to fix this culvert. We got to fix this whole thing because the next big storm that comes through, it could wash out the entire bridge. And now you got 300 homes, probably, close to 700 people plus,
without
completely access. Cut off. No ambulance. I mean, you have to literally build a bridge or like bring in a helicopter. So this is, these are real lives and real people. And then of course the damage to property, don't want to get started on insurance rates. I mean, heck, people in Florida can't even get, homeowners insurance. Yeah. So all that stuff is compounding where we're just paying more. It's impacting our health, our environment. I always get back. This is kind of at the end of the day. Let's save the planet, but let's save ourselves.
Right.
If we improve if we reduce air pollution in DeKalb County, people will be healthier. They will live longer. We'll have less ambulance calls. We'll have less hospital visits. I mean, we're paying for all of this, and because DeKalb County and Fulton County are very generous, I mean, we're putting in almost $30 million a year through our hospital tax into Grady. I mean, these are individuals who don't have health insurance, who are even more vulnerable to these environmental issues. Yeah. And they get cancer, they get heart disease, they get emphysema, pneumonia. Those are $100,000, $200,000, $1 million medical bills that we're paying through our social safety net hospital system, because Georgia hasn't expanded Medicaid, so that's a whole other issue.
Well, you bring up a good point. And there's so much intersectionalities between climate and what's happening in our climate and public health. I mean, people don't realize that. And I think constituents that vote you guys into office, I think they're even unaware that about these issues. What can we do that will raise awareness and teach people that climate health is a public health issue, and that there's the intersectionalities between all sectors of county government, How can we better educate constituents so that they know how to vote?
I think it's a never ending journey. You know, it is the journey, not the destination. We want to get to a vision of a utopia where the air is clean, the water is clean, people are treated fairly. I mean, when politicians and I think voters go to vote, in their mind they're imagining a future that is better.
And everyone wants that future.
Everyone
wants that future.
So the least I could do, and I think any of us could do, is leave it better than we found it. And especially if we know about something, right? If you know that there is a problem, and either you have the power to fix it, or you have the voice to raise awareness of it, and you don't, then we're letting not only ourselves down, but our community and future generations. So I think there's an obligation. If you don't know about this stuff, hopefully you're watching this right now and you're learning about it, right? If you do know about it, the next step is, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah.
And the great thing about that mindset is it's very empowering, because when you realize that there is a problem and that there actually are very clear-cut, straightforward solutions that require a little bit of political will, a little bit of vision, but ultimately we can look around our country, around the world, and see where communities are already doing it. So we don't have to we can do it our own way. We'll do it the DeKalb way, right? Or the Atlanta way, or whatever community you're in. But we can take inspiration from what other places are doing and say, you know what, that's actually working really well for them. I can think about places in Barcelona, in Costa Rica, in Singapore. I mean, there's just systems in place, technologies.
Why can't we have blue zones here in America?
Blue zones where, people can walk, buy, go to the grocery store, live in a clean environment. I'll share one example just because it came up, is just the biolab fire in Conyers.
Oh, God.
So when that erupted, there was a lot of misinformation. And a lot of it stemmed from the fact that there actually aren't very many air quality monitors in Metro Atlanta. There's only like two main ones. So if you pull out your iPhone and you pull up the weather app and you click on the little air quality index, it's only feeding from one or two locations in DeKalb County, and a couple over by the airport and, Hartsville, Jackson, Atlanta. So when people were saying well, how's the air quality in my neighborhood? Well, we actually didn't know. And so one of the things that our offices were going to work on with Science Georgia over the next 6 months is we want to identify locations all throughout DeKalb County, libraries, parks, neighborhood sites, where we can have on the ground air monitoring, synced in, through the internet, where people can say, okay, here's the air quality in my neighborhood. It'll be good for disasters, like if something, chemical fire or whatever ever happens again, it's do we need to shelter in place? Is the cloud moving towards us? Because you remember they were it might move towards DeKalb. Well, but where
it was
DeKalb?
In city of Decatur. We opened up our windows that morning. My daughter goes, "It smells like a pool outside," and I'm like, "What?"
Yeah,
I mean, there was no information.
The only way you'd know it is by going outside, right? And so, but then on top of that, just knowing in real time that your neighborhood park, is the air quality good? Is it medium? Is it, in the red zone, where if you're a senior or a child with asthma, the health experts are saying don't go outside, right? Those are important data points. So I think, education is important, but also transparency. We need to make sure that residents actually know the quality of their environment in their own neighborhood, not just in the region.
They can lead their decisions with data and not fear-mongering and I mean, that's because that's what happened. Everyone's like, "Oh my God, are we okay? Let's shut our doors. Maybe all of our animals need to come inside. What about the birds? They're there's gonna be birds dropping out of the sky." I mean, we heard all kinds of stuff.
Yes, and without that education or information, people will spread things, or they will there'll be conjecture. Oh, I heard this and I heard that. So we want to avoid that. But knowledge is power. And the great thing about, just back to the DeKalb Green New Deal. So if you are a DeKalb County resident and you care about climate action, you care about soil health, you care about making the environment better for now and future generations, we want you to be a part of this effort, because we're not just we're advocating. We're not just educating, we're advocating. We want all of the elected officials, school board, city council, mayor, county commissioner, CEO, up to the state level. We want a greater chorus of voters and residents saying we have got to do something different. It's working. We're making progress, but you got to keep pushing.
Really good segue, Commissioner. I'm going to ask you a question. This might be like kind of difficult to answer, but we fast forward 10 years. You may not be commissioner anymore. Hopefully you will. Maybe you'll be something else. Who knows? What do you want to see? What is your dream? What's like, what is your dream for DeKalb County? And talk about it through the lens of the DeKalb County Green New Deal.
Well, and so if I was gonna follow where we're at with our environmental and clean energy transition plan, in 10 years, hopefully we'll be about 20% of the way there towards clean energy. We'll have installed solar panels on 90 buildings in DeKalb County, because that's where we have like the best solar capacity, parking lots. We'll have converted most of our truck fleet over to electric vehicles, and we'll be saving money and charging them up and reducing air pollution there, because car emissions is the highest source of air pollution in DeKalb County.
Imagine that.
But also that we will create a lot more jobs, because installing solar on 90 buildings, doing energy efficiency on 100 plus buildings and facilities in DeKalb County is going to take time. It's going to save us money, but we're going to need probably thousands of people, and you can't outsource those jobs. Like, these jobs need to be done in a building. You need to change out the lighting fixtures. You need to put in insulation. You need to install smart building technology, and then you need to maintain it. And so the great thing about, as we invest into these technologies and these clean energy transitions, we're literally creating thousands of jobs that are highly skilled jobs that, quite frankly, once you've done the work at a DeKalb building, you can do them at any building, at any location site in the world, because it's the same technology. It's just a different location. So to me, that's kind of the promise, because, let's be honest, DeKalb County right now, we're hovering around 17 to 20% of our population live at or below the poverty level. And this is a problem, because we know very clearly that the school to prison pipeline is real. Currently in DeKalb County, we have almost 400 children living in extended stay hotels. That's not a good environment for their learning career.
You said those numbers could be even,
and those numbers are probably actually a little higher, because that's only self-reported. So we think it's potentially, and we know just between domestic violence shelters and folks that are, families that are doubled up, it's over 1,300, but probably several thousand above that. And and so I think about those children, because if they don't have the opportunity through their educational programs, but also economic opportunity, hopefully if they graduate, or if they decide, they want to do the tech school route, that there actually is going to be economic development with it,
right,
and it'll lift, all the boats. And that's just, to me, and we're spending a lot of money on the jail. We're spending a lot of money on things that are the problem, like policing, right? Like, we spend a lot of money on police, okay? And we're not going to solve crime just by, we've reached our police ratio, and so all of a sudden now crime is taken care of.
Yeah.
It's a both and. We want to cover the streets and have, when you call 911, someone's there to answer and respond. But at the same time, we want to try to prevent that from ever happening in the first place. And we do that by supporting our young people, giving them jobs and economic opportunity.
I think you are absolutely right. And one of the things that you and I have talked about, we agree on most, is that we can either have thousands and thousands of bees going out and making honey, or destroying our planet. Mm-hmm. And I think like that is the whole hive mentality, kind of where, when, we talked about the fruitful community and its role with like youth, like creating jobs for young people in this green tech. Green tech is a big money, could be a huge money maker. Yep. It could really, we can save our planet and make money. And I think those two things can actually like live together. And I think that they're not diametrically opposed. I think that a lot of people want to think they are, but they're not. Yep. And I think there's an opportunity in DeKalb, like a huge opportunity in DeKalb County, to lead the green industry and create new jobs, especially for young people coming out of college. And I've front faced with, God, Emory, everyone from like Emory to Tech, to GSU students, and they would love if we had a great hub in DeKalb County where they were graduating college. We can keep them here. We can retain them, and give them green jobs.
And a
lot of it right now.
And on that point, and we were looking at doing this early on in my first term as commissioner, but President Biden sort of expanded upon the whole civilian conservation corps and created a climate conservation corps funding program. And unfortunately we weren't in a position to apply for any federal grants to support that.
Right.
But what I really would like to see is us having a DeKalb County civilian climate corps, young people, people graduating high school who are actually on the ground in DeKalb County, fixing our eroding stream banks, cleaning up vacant, dirty, derelict property and planting flowers and fostering, in land stewardship and doing the type of environmental remediation that is not only just it's a job in the sense that it provides some foundation, it's not kind of necessarily a career, but it's a base to which to get into sort of the green environmental industry. But again, it comes back to it's improving our environment right here in DeKalb County. We're not sending someone in the Peace Corps, to some island, in the Pacifics to do something there. We're talking about fixing our flooding in our own neighborhoods. And this last storm, and actually it's really every time there's a major rain event, someone sends me a picture of their backyard because their backyard's on a creek somewhere, and it's a little small, little cute little creek, and then all of a sudden the flood comes, and then their entire backyard is flooded. Hopefully not to their house, and then half of their embankment has now been washed away.
Yeah,
and they're literally losing their property. And then, of course, everyone downstream is getting, screwed by it because all that erosion and that sediment pollution kills everything ecologically.
It affects all neighbors.
And then it creates more flooding downstream. Yep. And then now you got thousands of neighbors that are just I got this home and I've invested in it for 40 years and I'm literally losing my property that I bought. That and a lot of people, especially in we have neighbors in South DeKalb, they're this is my I'm going to give this to my family, and a third of my property's gone because it washed away.
Yeah,
and so so that kind of that work it helps protect our own neighborhoods, creates jobs, but it's a global. It's adding to the global goal of better water quality, better carbon sequestration, using less pollutants in the air.
I tell people all the time, that whole analogy of sending your problems downstream for someone else to fix. Mm-hmm. Well, that is the county. We're all as bad residents doing bad landscaping. We're sending our problem to you guys.
So many pollutants. Yeah. And and for the most part, depending on where you are in DeKalb, but most of DeKalb is going to be on the eastern part of the Continental Divide.
There's a dividing line. Yeah. And that's the railroad.
It's the railroad tracks, through Clarkston, ironically.
I think so many people don't. You told me that a while ago, and I was like, "What?"
It really is. And actually, there's a great if you're familiar with the mural on DeKalb Avenue by Lake Claire.
Yes.
That mural is the watersheds, right? And they kind of sort of you get to kind of stop and walk. You can't drive by and look at it. But yes, if you're in south of Clarkston, basically south of Memorial, we'll just say that railroad track south. All that water is going to the South River, and the South River goes down all the way to the Okmulgee and then the Altamaha. Might have that reversed, and then out to the Atlantic Ocean. And then on the other side, north of Memorial Drive, in essence, north of the railroad tracks in Ponce de Leon, basically, all goes to the Peachtree Creek sort of rivershed, but then to the Chattahoochee, down to the Gulf of Mexico, right? We literally...
It's crazy.
2 different bodies of water. So everything we put, from our runoff from our cars, our landscapes, it's got to go somewhere. And, I don't know. I'm sure the coastal communities would like us to
Do our part.
clean it up a little bit more.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. So let's have a little bit of fun. I want to take a second and ask you like a quirky question. So, we've had a lot of climate disasters. Really a few weeks ago, it felt kind of apocalyptic. Like we had those 2 storms and I look outside my window and it's like a haze of chemical running through my neighborhood. I'm like, oh Jesus, we're really screwed. We're really screwed here. So I'm sure we all think about like natural climate disasters. Who would be on your survival team?
My survival team?
If like we had a major disaster, who would you want on your survival team?
Well, probably you, because you know what plants you can eat and and you shouldn't eat, right?
I might get you in a little trouble, but yeah. I might find you some weird mushrooms that we probably should.
I don't want to be alarmist about it, but I think that where we ought to be thinking is, and this is kind of in the conversation with the resilience hubs, because we could be in a future, and clearly there are some parts just from this last hurricane where there's communities that still have not recovered. Like there's still no power. I mean, they just haven't cleaned up, and it could take months just to clean things up. And so we have to kind of be in this mindset. Well, what if a natural disaster hits DeKalb County, and we have got no power? We've got folks who need to get their medication, need to charge their phones. They have to there's basic survival things. And what I'd like to do is twofold. It's one, let's just make sure everyone individually has a plan, right? So, and this is kind of like, FEMA puts this out every year where they kind of, and this was real big back when like Walking Dead was on TV and they were filming in Atlanta. They were like, you need a zombie disaster preparedness kit, but really it's a hurricane / tornado, / flooding.
Actually, I really love that. Like I really love that.
Yeah, and it's like you need your little radio, and you need your flashlights.
I think we have an idea for Halloween for next week.
Okay,
I'm thinking in my head.
Okay, good. Yeah. So I mean, we all should like have enough of supplies and information to where we can exist for a couple days. But the reality of these climate disasters are that it could be weeks and even months. And so this is where the government really needs to come together and say, every community in DeKalb County within some radius will have a resilience hub, where if you just like are completely like, you don't like completely displaced, whatever circumstances come up, if we're out of food, we're out of batteries, what are we going to do? There's some place that you can get to where there'll be shelter, food, and some level of resilience.
And a team of people that can help you.
And a team of people, right. And so, this is something I think we've talked about. I mean, they created the Medical Reserve Corps after 9/11, which is more about like responding to like medical emergencies after a disaster. But now it needs to become more of a climate. We need to layer in a couple more skill sets, if you will.
Yeah.
And then, long term, I think it doesn't hurt if we just, find a way just to, if we're growing more food locally, if we have infrastructure that just is more resilient in general, then those natural disasters that if they hit us in the 80s, they would completely wipe us out. But in 2025, 2030, we've put in the stormwater, we've put in the infrastructure that at least could contain it to a certain level, and it wouldn't be as bad. It's all about mitigating risk, right? We never can prepare for every possible thing, but if we have enough layers of preparedness, we can make that disaster a lot less worse in terms of the impacts.
Yep. We have to be definitely innovative in our approach and stop putting band-aids on things when it happens. Reactionary solutions don't. I loved what you said yesterday. And either you keep this or cut this out, but like to Marta, it was like with the old ways of the approach. It's not gonna solve issues. We have to start thinking outside the box. We have to.
If you look at if the data is telling you, I mean, I try to be. I'm a progressive Democrat, so I've got like my own ideologies and things I think are important. But when the data and the evidence is so overwhelming,
Right.
this is not working, or here's what probably will happen,
Right.
and we don't prepare for that, then, vote us all out. That's what I say. Or shame on us for, as our government or as our leaders, not preparing for that possibility. There's no excuse, because it's not like we don't know. And this is kind of like maybe this is like the final point on like the DeKalb Green New Deal. For years we'd say we need to solve the climate crisis, and eventually we were like, well, we don't need to solve it. Because we already know it. We know the answers. Like the solution is action. There's no silver bullet. Here's the 20 things that you can do, in different measures in your community, interpersonally, within your own community, within the government, with the larger systems. Not taking action is the problem.
Yeah.
We already know how to solve it. Now we just need to act.
But I also find that if we are spending our resources and not actually connecting our resources, then we're working, hard and not smart. And that's one of the things I find
absolutely.
like in government is like one of the things that kind of frustrates me is like, okay, well, there's a vast amount of resources in DeKalb County. Like we could make big changes. We could do it really, really fast.
Oh yeah. We'll spend $100,000 on a study in a heartbeat.
Oh yeah.
But then doing this, like implementing the study, we got to think about that one.
I picked up the, we were cleaning out the office, and I think I found a 2011 sustainability plan.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
And Kathy in the sustainability department is redoing the plan, rewriting the plan. We talked about it, and I looked through it, and I was like, this all sounded really great. It was super progressive for 2011.
The cab was on.
The cab
was like the leader in green back in 2008, 2009, 2010. Like they were like,
those years.
We were going to do some
golden.
serious stuff, and then it just went sideways real quick. And it's unfortunate because we used to and if you come to the fifth floor of the Maloof building, you've seen this, but we have all these awards from the ARC.
I see
Green communities, but it's like from 15 years ago. And it's like, oh man. But now we are back to gold status. I will say that. We're back to gold status. Our goal is to get platinum, I think, in the next, round. So we're making progress, but yeah, we had to kind of recover from, back when we were going to do all these great things and then we didn't do them.
No. We're doing it. We're doing it, though. Well, I really appreciate your time. I appreciate you coming on this podcast.
Thank you.
This is going to be a really great conversation for people to hear how kind of local government plays a big part in climate solutions. I think that we can make a big difference. We can make a huge difference. And in fact, I think that informing you and you listening to things like this will actually help a lot. People want to say that they got to go out and do something. Well, sometimes just informing yourself and educating yourself is really the best tool, and it'll solve a lot of anxieties you have. So Commissioner, listen, big fan, have always been a big fan, love your work, love working with you. We have I want to do some homework here, or some housekeeping. You've got some big events coming up, you've got some things coming up. Do you want to tell our listeners about them, and hopefully this will launch before that, so that we'll be able to promote it. So tell us where to find you as well and how to connect to you.
Yeah, so you can go to commissionertedterry.com. That's just my county commission office website where you can contact me and see all our initiatives, including the DeKalb Green New Deal. Regardless of the election, and that's the thing, regardless of, and it does matter about who's president, but regardless of what happens in the presidential election, we are going to move forward in DeKalb County. We're not going to let anyone in Washington decide our future. Would love their help. We'll ask for money. Don't worry. We're going to try to get that grant money, but we're not going to wait for someone else and some other, entity to save us. We have the power to do it ourselves.
Right.
That's what this DeKalb Green New Deal is all about. That's what we're trying to do, empower our residents to realize we already have the power to make these changes. Let's go out and do it.
Yeah. It's kind of the punk rock grassroots movement.
That's right. Yeah. Get up in the mosh pit.
Yeah.
Knock those old systems over.
Yep.
Have some fun doing it. Save the earth. Get your hands a little dirty in the soil.
That's right.
Grow some food. Save the bees.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting what punk rock has become, but or for us, what punk rock has become. Well, thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
This has been a great episode.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. Peace out.